So I was awarded, along with a couple of other institutions, a National Science Foundation grant for 4 years to study the morphological and molecular evolution of a group of tropical vines called passion flowers. And so there are lots of different aspects to the project. So I'll talk mainly about the responsibilities of Keene State and the sort of role I need to fulfill as a part of this project. My primary responsibility is really to involve undergraduates in our work. That's what my main task is. And so what I'm doing here at Keene State is we have 3 genes that we need to sequence for our project. There are 6 total, and we're doing 3 here at Keene State and 3 in California. And so we have about 260 species to sequence, which is a lot. And so what the students are doing is they're trying to get all of these species sequenced. So they have all these 3 different genes, and so I usually have students work in pairs, and a pair of students will work on one gene, and then another, and then a third. So I usually have around 6 students during any semester working on this project. And so that's one of our responsibilities, one of the Keene State's responsibilities. And then another one of my responsibilities is to help a student get field research. I should say, in order to get DNA sequences for these species, a lot of these species haven't been collected ever. And so in some cases we have to go into the field to get the species we need, or they were collected, but they were collected in like the 1800s and we can't get DNA off of the specimen. So for Keene State, what I'm doing is I go to Mexico. So I went to Mexico like 2 years ago and collected a bunch of species, brought them back, distributed amongst the institutions, and then we've been sequencing those species. And there are a couple that I didn't get. And so this year I'm taking a student, Jared Peters, who's actually working over there, and we're going to go to Mexico for 3 weeks and try to track down those species I didn't get during my first trip. So that's another piece. Third piece is the morphological piece. And so what we had to do is put together like a little book as a part of our project that describes all the species, includes like distribution maps and pollination biology information and all that jazz. And so part of that information we're getting from when we're in the field, but a lot of it we're getting from these really old plant specimens that have been collected ages ago and that we have to kind of analyze and look at. And most of those specimens are housed in Missouri at one of the largest botanical gardens in the country, which is Missouri Botanical Garden. They're one of our collaborators. And so when we go there, we look at the different species, and we look at their morphology so we can put together this book. So that's another part of the project. And then a third part of what we're going to be doing here at Keene State is we're going to be sending, every year I send 2 students out to California so that they can work on different parts of the project. So they can work on like developmental biology, so they learn how to use like a scanning electron microscope, and like all this stuff is just really great, amazing opportunities for these guys. They also, my responsibility is get them to go to conferences too, so they need to go to national conferences, international conferences if possible, local and regional conferences. So all of my students have inundated the AEC with too much information about passion flowers. And then out at NERDS, Vancouver, Salt Lake City, this year it's down in Rhode Island. So there are a number of ways in which we're sort of engaging students in this project, and that's what's exciting to me about it, because I'm first and foremost a teacher. And though I love teaching in the classroom, I love it. I love teaching in the classroom, I love classroom laboratory activities. I have never seen that I have a bigger effect as a teacher on these research students, without any doubt. It has a big impact on them as learners. They become invested in their education. They become involved in a project that's bigger than just a week-long laboratory they do in a class. Now listen, like, here's an example. In our classrooms, we're using textbooks that are 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old. And so let's say you were taking a course in communication technology. Those textbooks would have no information in them about the iPhone. right, which has a huge impact, or Twittering, or anything like that that has had a huge impact on our society and the way we communicate. You know, that's up-to-date information. The information we're giving our students in our textbooks is old. You know, we have to find ways to engage them in current stuff that's going on. And by engaging them in current funded research, what we're doing is we're allowing them to be a part of the new stuff that's going on. It's important that they know the textbook information. Like, they need to have that knowledge. But then to be able to take that and really apply it over several years, that's new stuff. These guys are not consuming knowledge, they're producing knowledge. And I think that that is what's really, really important. And when they go to apply for jobs or apply for grad school, you know, they're not just consumers. And they also become better consumers. Because when they have a problem, they're not always able to go back to a textbook and find the information. They may have to email somebody at another university, you know, who's doing research like them, and say, hey, you know, this is what we've been experiencing, so what do you think is going on? They may have to Twitter them, you know, or send them a text message and say, you know, listen, this is what we're encountering in our lab, you know, what's going on with this? And then they'll get a message back and say, oh, you know, we had the same problem, and this is what we did. And so they learn how to not just go to a textbook to find information, but to use people as resources, to use, you know, web resources a lot better, and discriminate good web sources from bad web sources and things like that. And it's just, you know, they have that background knowledge to make those decisions. So, you know, if you're an employer or you're a professor who is looking for a student, you know, are you going to choose a student who's been a consumer? Or are you going to choose a student who's been a producer? And of course, you're going to choose a student who's been a producer. What we need is we need more support for these kinds of activities, because what we want to do, I think, and I don't care what kind of school you're at, if you're at a big R1 school where the professors get paid to do, you know, mainly research, or you're at a smaller school like Keene State, that's a liberal arts school, you know, we want our students to be current. We want them to get jobs, and we want them to be competitive. And the way we're going to do that is by involving them in research. So I think that if we continue to get more support at all schools in New Hampshire, but particularly at small schools like Keene State, we are producing a first-class education here by not only engaging them in the classroom, but engaging them in active research. And I don't care if it's like you're writing a novel or you're designing a building, whatever. Engaging students in that kind of thing is going to make them on the competitive scale up here rather than down here. And so I think that if we can continue to get support to do that, I think we're just going to be able to take our students to a much higher level, which for me is what's really important, is to take a student from here to here, and so that by the time they graduate, they're ready to go. So for me, I guess, for the future, what I'd like to see is more support for this kind of work so that more people are able to do it, because it's really hard right now, because I have a full load of teaching, I have a full load of committee work, and it's really hard to fit in probably the most valuable type of teaching I do. It's hard to actually fit into the schedule. And so what I would like to see is that, you know, we continue to support students who, the faculty members who are allowing students to become producers. That's what I want to see to continue to happen. And I've seen it continue to happen since I've been here. And I just want to see it keep going. So I think that I would be a lot less passionate about what I do if I weren't involved in research, because I like to be a producer of knowledge too. It's what keeps me going, it keeps my mind active, it keeps me current in literature, it makes me a better professor, is that my research also makes me a much better teacher in the classroom. So there are a lot of different ways that research is beneficial. It's not only beneficial to me as a scholar and to my students as who want to become producers, but it's really important in making me a better teacher in the classroom.